Today's law enforcement blessings. Welcome to today's law enforcement daily devotional. Having a few technical difficulties today, so I'm just making sure video is running and everything. But I want to get right into today's read because I hope you read. This was a great read. Ezekiel chapter 33, verse 21, all the way through chapter 36, verse 38. And right off the bat, there was just this, not a specific law enforcement takeaway, but we have chain of command, and we have officers, supervisors, from sergeants to lieutenants to captains to assistant chiefs or deputy chiefs to the chief to, or not a commander, but a commissioner. Some places have commissioners. Woo. We don't have those in Texas. It's hard for me to remember that. But anyway, just this great read starting in chapter 34, verse 7. God speaks directly to the shepherds of Israel. And the shepherds are the people that are in authority over the Israelites, the Jews, not just in Israel, but in Judah and in Jerusalem. And when I say in a position of authority, that kind of covers everything, because with their system of government, the religious leaders and their religious leaders were the elders of their community, who were also their judges, and there were the Levites who had authority, but it was all based more on a religious system than a governmental system, or their governmental system was more based on a religious system than a civil government type system, if that makes sense and I didn't confuse you too much. But when he talks about the shepherds, he's talking about their leaders. And in verse 10, he says he is not going to put up with these bad shepherds anymore, and he's going to remove them. And it just made me think, in law enforcement, our leaders have to be good. And I've been an officer and had supervisors. I've been a supervisor who worked for officers. And the supervisors have to be good from the top down. I mean, leadership really has to start at the very top of your organization. God himself will provide for the sheep, he says in verse 14, because the leaders, the shepherds, are not doing it. So he says, I'll take care of them. And then verse 16, God's talking about the leaders not doing what they're supposed to do. Listen to what God says and what it suggests about why he was upset with these shepherds. So I'm going to read the verse and think about your leaders or leaders in general, and what this verse says about what he doesn't like about their leadership or what they're doing in their leading of their people. It says, I will seek the lost. I will bring back the scattered. I will bind up the broken and strengthen the sick. But the fat and the strong I will destroy. I will feed them with judgment. God's making a comparison of saying, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go bring back the lost. And I'm going to heal the sick. And I'm going to bind up the broken because you're not doing it. And I'm not going to put up... He mentions earlier that the shepherds were, instead of taking care of the flock, they're picking them out and skinning them and eating them. They're not supposed to be eating the flock. They're supposed to be taking care of the flock. And that's why he talks about them being fat. And they're strong because they're eating lots of protein and whatnot. But he's tired of them feeding off of their own people. It's like sometimes we have politicians that will tell you, man, I'm going to work for you and I'm going to do everything I can. And then they tax you even more, and they live off your taxes and the hard work off your back and the sweat of your brow, and they're profiting from it. So not all politicians, I'm not saying all politicians, but there are some that come to mind that do that. And then in verse 17, God says he's going to make it right. He's not going to put up with this any longer. If you're a bad supervisor, he's going to get rid of you. He says there's no equality. Even that he talks about the supervisors not treating everybody the same. They have their favorites, and again, this goes to politics. But he's saying you should be treating everybody equal, and he's not going to put up with the way they're leading. When he says, I will feed you justice, they're obviously not getting justice because of the contrast. God's saying, I will bring justice. Well, when we get justice, justice brings us peace, brings us a sense of security. If there is justice, if law enforcement is taking care of the justice in my community, I'm safe and secure in my own home. I'm at peace because I know they're doing their job and they're doing it right. That's what we're called to do. But in 43:20, I'm sorry, I've got dyslexia. 34:23, God says He will set them up a shepherd. Just one shepherd. No more, shepherd over this flock, shepherd over that flock, shepherd over there, shepherd over, one shepherd. And He'll come from the line of David. That's Jesus, the good shepherd. Jesus knows His flocks and His flocks know Him. They know the sound of His voice. I love that and how it compares. It even compares to the 23rd Psalm. But that's something you can study on your own. And in verse 25 of this same chapter, here comes the covenant of peace, which you would expect that God's going to bring about because He's going to bring about justice. If He brings about justice, then we're going to have peace. And then just go back and read chapter 34, verse 26 through 31. And the way this is laid out with the season and the producing of fruit, to me, it just sounds like heaven. It's a beautiful, beautiful set of verses, how chapter 34 ends. Anyway, chapter 36, verse 26, God says, I will give you a new heart, and I will put a new spirit within you, and I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. These are born-again Christians. Even though this is an Old Testament passage, it's looking forward to Christ and us getting this new spirit and getting a new heart, being born again in Jesus Christ and abiding in Him, living in Him. Great read today. Tomorrow we're in Ezekiel chapter 37, 38, and 39. So read that one. It's going to be good. Come back here and we'll look for a takeaway. Till then, you guys be safe.